Thank you everyone for joining us. This is our Customized Employment Solutions Echo, and we're really excited for you all to be here with us today. Sorry, I gotta get my slides situated, and they're gone. Um, so the purpose of this project is, where did you go? Oh my goodness, I've never had this happen before. Sorry, everyone. All right, thank you for your patience with that. So this project is a collaboration between two NDCPD projects. This is a collaboration between ND Create and Project Echo. So our goal really with this is to equip transition teachers and employment specialists to better advocate for inclusive work environments, to be able to foster stronger partnerships with employers and become, or ultimately empower students to achieve meaningful and sustainable employment. Today's session, we're going to focus on integrating customized employment solutions into the transition setting. So before we begin today's session, we want to describe an Echo session and what sets it apart from other trainings. In essence, Echo allows us to move information and not people. So it allows you, the participant, to actively learn about a topic and become a resource for your community. So each session, there's going to be a formal didactic portion followed by a case presentation. Case presentations are a really excellent opportunity for participants to present a case of a real life scenario and get feedback and resources from our content specialists as well as other participants. So if you are interested in submitting a case, please reach out to me and I can help you prepare that and present it at a future session. Your participation is really the key to the success of our Echo sessions. We really want to have this interactive community where our presenters, stakeholders, all communicate and support each other during a session. So we do encourage you to turn on your camera throughout the sessions as long as you're comfortable doing so. And we love it when people are engaged and ask feedback or ask questions after the didactics and provide feedback for the case. These case narratives are really the best way to solidify any of the skills learned in the didactics and receive direct advice if you have submitted a case before. So yeah, if you wouldn't mind, feel free to put your questions in the chat or raise your hand and feel free to unmute and we will gladly have that conversation. We are offering social work credits for today's session. So to receive those credits, we just ask that you fill out the evaluation that will be sent out after this series or after this session. So we'll go ahead and jump in with some introductions. Our speaker today is Deb Curl, but we're also going to start with our case presenter, who is Nathaniel Reddington. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. Nathaniel is getting a ride about 4:30, so we want to be respectful of his time. So we're going to do things a little bit different today. And Nathaniel's going to share with us his customized employment experiences and just to give us a little bit of insight of what it looks like from that perspective. So thank you, Nathaniel, for being here.
You're welcome.
Why don't you go ahead and start by introducing yourself? Let us know who you are, where you work, what you do.
I'm Nathaniel Reddington. I work at NDCPD as an ability expert. So
Awesome. So can you give us a little bit of background on your customized employment journey?
um it started out with uh a meeting to figure out what was what is needed to help me find a job. And it just went from there. I had I found an email, and then I had uh, from Maggie, and then I had Derek from Easter Seals look into it and got me an interview and waited for the response, and here I am, basically.
Nice. And so that meeting that you're talking about, was that a discovery meeting?
Discovery meeting, yes.
Can you talk about how is that discovery meeting just a little bit different from any other like maybe person-centered planning meetings or IEP meetings that you've been a part of?
Um, they tell you, they help you figure out what you're good at and what your skills and abilities are, um, and what they think would uh, help in a job.
And you had been working somewhere previously before that discovery meeting, right? I remember you mentioning something about working on base.
Yeah, I was working on base at the in the cafeteria, and they had us doing food orders for military people, but it was hard for me too because when I was working at Verity, which is a internet-based at-home job, working for McDonald's, it was mainly pictures that I clicked on, and at the cafeteria on base, it was all words, so it made it a little difficult.
So, you had the discovery meeting after your position at on base.
Right.
Okay. So how has customized employment benefited you?
Um, they carved out the job just for me and got me the equipment that I needed and made sure I'm doing okay. And that was basically it. And then they um, closed my case um, at um, Volk Rehab. So
So you do you like your customized job?
yes, I do.
What I know you mentioned that they carved it out. Was it carved out with like specific hours or like specific tasks that you were good at?
Some specific hours.
Okay.
When I first started, it was 12:30 to 4:25, and now it's 11:30 to 4:25 with two 15-minute breaks.
And I forgot to ask, how long have you been at NDCPD?
A year.
A year? Very cool.
Yep.
So during that discovery meeting, what skills and interests were identified for you?
But we discovered that I was really strong in doing
Pardon?
computer stuff, and that
Well,
was
there's supposed to be one in here.
that was the main focal point because we wanted something with computers again.
Nathaniel Courtney wants to know what some of the kinds of equipment that you use that helps you with your job.
Oh, I have two monitors and I have a desk that raises up and down for my height to make my work easier.
Do you want to talk about the font size or like the paper color accommodations that you use?
Oh yeah. Way back in high school, they did a test and they figured out that if I have something copied on green minty paper, that it helps my eyes track. So,
You feel about mint ice cream?
right, same color,
Yeah, the
not
same
edible
color.
though.
Courtney says, cool. Thanks for
Yeah.
elaborating on that. So what would you like people in our audience to know about having a job? Like, was there any resources that were really helpful when you were trying to find a job?
Um, Easter seals was really helpful because when I started working with them, they were ready and willing to help me, and they still come in and check on me. I have a couple of job coaches that check on me and ask me if I need help with anything, and usually I'll say yay or nay. So
Have they like faded how often they check on you since you've kind of been settled
mm,
in?
probably once or twice a week.
Okay.
So
I remember when we first talked about this, one thing that you also wanted people to know is patience, because it takes a while.
yeah, big thing on patience because I got the interview for this job, but then I didn't hear back for probably 2, 3 months. So if you find a job, just be prepared to wait for the response because it's not going to be right away most of the time.
And even from that discovery meeting to even getting an interview or applying for jobs, was
Right,
there a little bit of a
right.
wait there too?
Yeah. It's not like, oh, I applied, I'm going to hear tomorrow. No. I mean, that would be nice, but that's not how it works.
Yeah, it's like every single business has their own little bureaucracy that
Right.
takes a while. And I was reassuring Nathan, it took me, or Nathaniel, it took me, I think, 2 or 3 weeks too, or it was like a month between the application, interview, and accepting process,
Right.
which isn't great for people that are not patient like myself. So,
And then they finally called me and offered me the job, and now I'm here. So,
yeah, so it's worth the wait for sure.
oh, yeah, it's worth the wait, definitely.
Well, do we have any other questions from the audience for Nathaniel?
Nathaniel, I hear your supervisor in the office is pretty cool too. So
Right?
congratulations on that.
Right? Couldn't do
Okay,
it without you, bud.
appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for agreeing to present, Nathaniel. I think it's really
Yeah, no
great to just
problem.
hear from people who have actually been through the process. And it's kind of exciting to hear that you've had both that supportive employment experience versus like the customized employment
Right.
experience. Would you agree that the customized employment experience was more positive or more beneficial than just the supported employment?
It was way more beneficial.
Good to hear. Not because this, presentation or the psycho series is all about customized
Right.
employment. Awesome. Well, if anybody has any more questions, please feel free to put them into the chat. Nathaniel's going to stick around here for a while, and I will go ahead and pass it over to Deb Curl, who is our presenter for today. And I'll go ahead and get your slides pulled up.
While you're doing that, I'm just going to introduce myself. Welcome, everybody. And as Krista said, I'm Deb Curl. I was the transition coordinator at Dickinson High School for 5 years. I have since moved to Idaho and so have other employment right now, but definitely still have a passion for helping people with disabilities obtain meaningful employment. So that's kind of a little bit of background on me. I'll stop periodically to ask for questions, but if anyone has questions as we're going along, please feel free to throw them into the chat, and Kyle's going to keep an eye on that for me. So there are many different benefits to customized employment, and Nathaniel kind of talked about some of those benefits when he talked about his experiences. But really, I think one of the main points is that people's eyes are really open to possibilities. So I want to kind of outline a circumstance that I dealt with as a transition coordinator. There was a student at the high school who was nonverbal. In talking to his mom and his family, they really didn't have any expectations for him to be employed. They just wanted to keep him comfortable and kind of find a supported place for him to live and just for him to do the things that he kind of wanted to do as life progressed. And I talked to his mom about going through the customized employment process, and she was agreeable, but again, without any real expectations for what would happen. And as we went through the process with the discovery meeting and everything, she was just astonished at all the things that people came up with that the student was good at and his interests and possibilities that were out there. So she agreed to continue in the process, and he ended up obtaining employment, customized employment at a workplace in Dickinson. And to my knowledge, again, I moved, but to my knowledge, he still works there. And his mom is one of the biggest advocates for customized employment now because of what her son was able to achieve through the process. She was just blown away at both the process and the opportunities there. So my second point is that it really helps people see opportunities instead of just barriers when you're working with a student. Sometimes we just kind of see the barriers that are there to them having meaningful employment, but it really does open up the opportunities that are available. Customized employment allows you to gain multiple perspectives from outside of just the school environment. So yes, I was meeting with students one-on-one to kind of talk to them about their interests and doing assessments to find out what their abilities were and that sort of thing. But when you get a whole team of people together, family, friends, their support staff, other school people from the school, so teachers, guidance counselors, people from the community, VR. When you get everybody together, it is tremendous what you can come up with as far as options and possibilities and ideas, and just that brainstorming session where everybody just kind of feeds off of each other and brings all this stuff to the table is just phenomenal. It's very impressive. When you are working with customized employment, you're really setting students up for long-term success. You're not just finding them a job for while they're in high school, but you're looking at possibilities for them, not only with employment, but also for post-secondary education and things as well. And again, setting them up for a long-term success. Customized employment in the process really encourages collaboration with so many people. As I mentioned, families and friends are involved in the process. I spent a lot of time doing outreach to businesses in the community and really gaining support from them for job opportunities for students, whether it was through customized employment or just regular employment, but just reaching out to them to find out options for students and what's available. I was amazed at how generous so many of them were with their time and resources to help students looking for jobs and help in the customized employment process. When you involve the other teachers on staff or other staff at your workplace, it opens their eyes to things too. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a bit when I talk about some of the different things that I instituted at Dickinson High School. But it also opens their eyes to different opportunities that they might know about that would benefit your students. So they might hear something that sparks something and they might say, well, yeah, this student, I heard they were interested in this, so there's this opportunity, or I know this person we could reach out to, or whatever. So the more people you have working with you toward your goals and the students' goals, the better. I don't know how many of you know about the WIOA program through Job Services, but Job Services can be a very valuable resource and someone to reach out to in order to utilize some of the programs they have. So with the WIOA program, I'm just going to briefly outline it. I had a student who really wanted to do auto detailing. And I reached out to several dealerships, car dealerships in Dickinson, and they were kind of open to it, but not really. And then I reached out to public transit in Dickinson and said, hey, there's a student that really wants to do kind of auto detailing. Would you have an opportunity for him to work for you washing or cleaning the vehicles that you have for public transit? And they said, well, yes, and that's something we have to do, and something right now we're having all of our employees do on their own, but sometimes they just really don't have time. And so we would love to have him here, but we don't have the money right now to employ him. So I worked with job services through the WIOO program, which will pay the students wages for a period of time. So the student can actually get paid for what they're doing and kind of try out the job. The business place has an opportunity through that to see the value of what the student is doing at the workplace. And so we got it all set up, and the student started working at public transit, cleaning cars and things inside and out. And public transit ended up hiring him outright. He did a phenomenal job. He did just a wonderful job, and they saw the value and then developed a budget to employ him directly. And he ended up starting his own auto detailing business out of his home. Afterward, too, when he graduated from high school, he started his own auto detailing business. So that's something that we worked on. I helped him develop flyers to send out and some of the different resources and stuff that he needed in order to start his own business. And I used him myself too for detailing. Vocational rehabilitation kind of goes without saying that collaboration with them can be very beneficial. Having students work with a voc rehab counselor is very beneficial, but then there are ways that I collaborated with them outside of that as well that I'll explain in a little bit. The post-secondary educational institutions are also something that really opens people's eyes to possibilities. So you may know about the A-STEP program, and there are several programs now around the state that are like the A-STEP program in that they support students with disabilities in obtaining a college education. And those opportunities shouldn't be bypassed either. So customized employment and supporting students with disabilities goes beyond just that employment piece and I guess post-secondary education kind of translates into educational or opportunities and employment opportunities as well. That educational piece can allow them to get jobs because of the education they've gained. I see there's a question in the chat. Was the school on board with you taking on this initiative, and how much of your FTE was dedicated to building those relationships with employers? So I was the transition coordinator, as I said, at Dickinson High School, and I wrote the proposal to VR every year. So I would kind of sit down and figure out what kind of hours I needed in a school year to accomplish what I'd set out to do. And surprisingly, pretty much every year, VR would reach out to me, the state office, and say, there's this other transition program. They didn't use all of their funding. So would you have any use for it? Would you want to use this funding that's left from their program? And I would pretty much inevitably say yes. I have all kinds of ideas, and there's all kinds of stuff that I would love to do. So yes, the school was on board. The school district is the entity that hired me. So when I was hired for the job, I went in for the interview to the central office and was interviewed by, I think there were 8 people, members of the school board, the principal, a couple of special ed teachers. I mean, there was a whole bunch of people there. So yes, they were definitely on board with me taking on this role. And I essentially developed the program from scratch. There wasn't really a transition program at the high school before I was hired. And when I left, I feel like I left it in pretty good shape. And I'm going to talk to you about some of the things that I did in relation to building that program in the next slide. Do we have any other questions at this point? And you can just unmute yourselves. You don't have to put them in the chat if you don't want to.
Melinda did put a link to the North Dakota Impact Consortium.
Oh, perfect.
Yes, so for those who are unfamiliar, Impact outlines all of the different inclusive post-secondary education programs in North Dakota. ASTEP used to be the only one, but there's a lot more now. Melinda, do you want to give a little plug in?
Sure, I would love to. So we currently have programs here at Minot State University. There's a program at BSC Botno. It's called the Aspire program. The TAP program at North Dakota State University in Fargo is entering its second year this fall. And we added our newest program at Valley City State University. So we're kind of almost in 4 quadrants of the state.
That's great to know. And that was new information for me too, because when I left, I think there were only 2. So that's wonderful. And my adult daughter has a pretty significant disability and she attended the ASEP program. So it's pretty exciting to see opportunities for her to attend the program and have that college experience. So I'm going to talk to you now about some of the things that I did in my role as a transition coordinator. And I wanted to say that I started out by myself in a little janitor's closet at the high school. So half of my office was full of stuff that the janitors used, ladders and garbage cans and things like that. And then I transitioned to my own full office with an assistant. So we ended up hiring someone to help me out. So if you're intimidated by, I don't know if I'd have that amount of time to do outreach, that sort of thing. First of all, write a really good proposal to VR. And if you follow through with the things that you say you're going to do and ask for funding for those things, they'll probably say yes. At least they did to me. Now, I don't know what the current rate is that VR pays to the school district. I was not paid the full amount per hour that was written into that funding proposal, but the excess then between what I got as my hourly wage and what the school district was paid went into a fund that I then used to make trips to colleges for post-secondary exploration, that I used to run the summer program that I developed, that I used for a number of different things, even just for office supplies. So those are just some things to kind of keep in mind. Some of the things that I did at the high school as a transition coordinator were first kind of starting with career assessments, interest inventories, and then working with students to do job searches. So yes, this is kind of what your interests are. This is what you have a propensity for. And then we would start looking at different jobs that are available out there that aligned with what their interests were. Then another important thing that I did was set up job shadows. So I'm going to talk about my daughter's experience. So she forever in a day wanted to be a veterinarian. That was like her life's goal, and that was the career that she wanted. So I set up a job shadow for her at a vet clinic, and she went in and she was super excited about it. And when I picked her up when she was done, she's like, nope, I don't want to draw blood. I don't want to help with surgery. I don't want to stitch up animals. I don't want to XYZ. And she totally changed her mind just based on that job shadow and exposure to what that job really entailed. It wasn't just going in and playing with animals and seeing all the cute puppies and kittens and whatever. She got a true look at what the job entailed and decided it was not for her. On the flip side, someone else set up a job shadow for her at the Dinosaur Museum in Dickinson, and she went in and helped clean fossils and things. And all I heard for days before was about how boring it was going to be, and I really don't want to do this, and this is just going to be terrible. And she went in and she loved it. She had a great experience, and she went back several more times to help out with things. So those job shadows can be so important in helping a student find out what they really do want to do and to see the reality of what a job entails that they might have kind of a glamorized idea about. So exposure to those different experiences, I think, is very important. I wanted to say that some of the business places in Dickinson did an amazing job with their job shadows. So, for instance, I reached out to Baker Boy and Dickinson, and they set up a whole experience. It was more than just a job shadow, it was a job experience at Baker Boy. I had a group of students that I took to Baker Boy over a number of different days, over a number of different weeks, and they took them through all of the different places in Baker Boy where someone could be employed. So the freezer, for instance, or maybe it was packaging products, or maybe it was those people that actually ran the machines to make different items, or shipping, whatever it happened to be. They took them through all of the different places that a person could gain employment at Baker Boy. They even wrote up kind of a list of what this person's job entailed in this department, and they did an amazing job. There were other places in Dickinson as well that just did an amazing job with the job shadows. And when I was calling and just kind of cold calling, because most of the places I didn't know anybody at the business place, but they were just so kind and so accommodating. So don't be intimidated by just doing some cold calling. Not everybody's going to say yes, of course, but you'll be amazed at all the people that do say yes and what they do, because they really have a passion for helping people and want reliable employees. So the next thing that I really focused on with students is developing a master application, which essentially contains all the information that would go onto an application. So, your contact information, your references, some of your work experience, those types of things, so that you could sit down with a student and fill out 5 applications for different places, and all the information would be contained right there on that master application. You didn't have to reduplicate it all the time. From that master application, we would develop a resume, and high school students will be like, well, I've never had a job, so what am I going to put on a resume? There's always stuff that you can put on a resume. And some of the things that we did as activities from the transition program got put on the resume. For instance, at our school, we had a school pantry and closet for students that might be experiencing some economic issues and can't afford food or clothing items. And so I set it up so that I would take a class of students over to the pantry, and they would volunteer. They would sort clothes. They would go through donated food items, check for expiration dates, all that kind of stuff. And that then got put on the resume as a volunteer activity. So you can directly work with them to kind of create things that they can put on their resume, but students don't often think about the fact that a resume doesn't just have to contain work experience. It can contain other things too. If you're in sports, if you're in organizations outside of school, if you volunteer for a church or that sort of thing, that can be put on a resume too. There was never a student, regardless of their abilities or inabilities to obtain employment, that had a blank resume. We always came up with a pretty well-rounded resume. I also helped them to craft a cover letter. And yes, I used kind of a form cover letter, but helped them tailor it to their specific needs and their specific interests so that they had one ready to go. And references. References are an important part of that process too. And most people will say, if you're applying for a business place, most of them will say, don't use relatives. Well, who are the first people that a student comes up with that they want to put on their reference list? Mom or dad or aunt or uncle or whoever, right? So you help them come up with people. Maybe it's a teacher at the school, maybe it's a coach, maybe it's the youth pastor, whoever it happens to be. They can come up with references that are not people that they're related to. So I think that's an important project and task as well. What I did also is set up mock interviews at the school. So in that relationship building that I did with business places in the community, I would kind of offer them multiple opportunities to help with transition activities at the high school. So I've talked to you about job shadows, but maybe one of the managers or just an employee would come in and help with mock interviews. So mock interviews I set up in the library at our high school, and I tried to make them as realistic as possible. So the students gained an education in questions that might be asked. I developed a list of the most common questions that are asked in an interview, and then helped them to decide how they would answer those questions. So each student would be individually interviewed at their own table, and I would have anywhere from 2 to 4 interviewers at the table. And I would give the interviewers a list of questions, those most commonly asked questions, but then also encourage them to come up with their own kind of bonus questions outside of that list so that students could learn to think on their feet. When we started doing mock interviews, I learned so much about so many things. There were an amazing number of people from different business places that came in and helped with those mock interviews. When the school employees, teachers, guidance counselors, even the librarian, when they saw what I was doing, they all wanted to be a part. They're like, hey, can I help? And soon business places were talking to other business places and their associates about, hey, did you hear what they're doing at Dickinson High School? You should really do it. It's a lot of fun and you get to meet a lot of kids. But even a side benefit to that was that, well, for instance, I asked the GM of Walmart if he would come in and participate in the mock interviews, and he said yes. So he came in, interviewed some students, and he essentially hired a couple of them on the spot during their mock interviews. He's like, wow, I'm really impressed, you know, how well spoken they are. They'd be great in this position. But then he also gave me the names of other people that might want to participate in doing the mock interviews. And he, everybody that I utilized in that process that I asked to come in or that volunteered to come in to participate in the mock interviews and help out with them said it was a positive experience. They said there should be a program like this for adults. You wouldn't believe the stuff that people say in an interview and how they dress and whatever. So it was a great learning experience. I know I'm kind of going on here, so I wanted to take a break and ask if there are any questions at this point. All right, then I'm gonna keep going on. So I developed a program, a summer program at Dickinson High School, which we called the SWEP program. Student Work Experience Program 2024 is what it would be this year. And that incorporated a whole bunch of different things into it. So what I noticed is that sometimes students with disabilities can be overwhelmed during the school year with just keeping up with classes, sports, different activities they're in and stuff. And summer was a good time for them to focus on that work experience component. And really, they had more time at that time to get a job and that sort of thing. So we developed this program and it started out the first year, I think we had probably maybe 4 or 5 different people that worked, swept with me during the summer. And then by the time I left, I think there were like 15 people that were helping job coach and do different things. So what all did it involve? Yes, it involved the students getting a job and working and being supported in that work that they were doing. We had a number of different job coaches that would support them in that employment, just so they could gain job skills. Showing up on time, not being on your phone while you're at work, doing what your boss needed you to do, finding out more about any supports that they needed, if they needed like alarms on their phone as reminders for when they were supposed to clock in or clock out or whatever it was. There was a lot of learning that took place both on the part of the student and the job coaches and staff at that point. But then we also had a number of different workshops that we offered during the summer. All of those things that are so vital to long-term success for a student, like soft skills, advocating for yourself. I talked about that volunteerism. So we had people that went over to a couple of different places and volunteered during the summer. We had our independent living center, someone come in from the independent living center, and she offered a permit study course. So there were students that wanted to take their permit test and needed a little bit of extra help studying for it. She came in and taught a class, and several of the students then were able to pass their permit test. We had people come in and talk about insurance because, you know, when you graduate from high school, move out on your own, you'll need car insurance, renter's insurance, whatever types of insurance, just so they had an awareness about those types of adult sort of things they would have to start thinking about. We had a workshop on organizational skills. How do you keep track of things and stay on task? Goal setting, budgeting and banking. So we had several people come in from different banks and talk about what it entailed to open a banking account and any costs or the importance of your credit score when you go out to rent an apartment. If you're working, then you're earning an income. So you need a budget and plan what you're going to do with that money. But then also, most places pay via direct deposit or you have to cash a check somewhere. So you need to set up a banking account. So we invited parents to come in for some of these sessions as well. And they were able to gain information on, you know, which banks offered X, Y, and Z and where they could go to set up an account, that sort of thing. We also developed a really unique and I think really cool workshop. So at the end of the summer, at the end of SWEPT, we would have an end of the summer picnic. And all of the students and their families were invited to this picnic. So we had a group of students that would get together and we divided them up into different categories. So some it was like appetizers, some main dish, some desserts. They would plan what they were going to make for this end of the summer picnic. We would budget it out based on how many people we expected would be attending. We would go shopping together and they would stick to their budget to do their shopping. And then they would cook. They cooked all of the stuff for that end of the summer picnic. And it was amazing. The things that they did, came up with, and just the thought they put into things. It was pretty amazing. So those are some of the things that we did during that summer swept program. I already talked about post-secondary exploration a little bit and the different programs that are available and out there. I invited parents to go when we did the post-secondary exploration to a step, for instance. I invited parents to go along to ask questions about the program, ask about cost and things like that, and really see what opportunities were available. But I know that, not every parent has the time to take off work to go up to Minot or whatever from Dickinson. So I also developed some parent-student information nights where I would invite those post-secondary educational places to come and speak to parents and students in the evening about opportunities, and parents could ask about what costs were, what programs they offered. Students could ask their questions. I geared them towards specific topics that I had heard parents say that they wanted more information about, like guardianship or ABLE accounts. I had groups of different places in Dickinson come in, so VR, job services, all the different places that I could think of in Dickinson that offered an array of services. So not just for those with the most significant disabilities, but just a broad variety of different services. And they had like little tables set up and they each gave a short presentation, and then parents and students could go to their tables and get brochures or more information about those different opportunities. So this all, I would say I developed most of this within the first couple of years, just based on needs that I was seeing at the high school in collaboration with the special ed department. My one-on-one and classroom opportunities with students, talks with parents. My brain doesn't stop. It just keeps going. In fact, when I went in to interview for the position, I had this huge list of things that, were potential opportunities that I presented during that interview. So, but it is very rewarding to see the fruits of your labors. To see students really get excited about goals and the different opportunities that they have, whether it's related to employment, whether it's related to post-secondary opportunities, whether it's related to just living on their own or in a supported environment, whatever it happens to be, it's extremely rewarding. Does anybody have any questions?
I just want to applaud the variety of different workshops that you offer. Like, this is fantastic. I would give anything for my kiddo to have access to this type of information, because there's just so much to coordinate during those transition years. So I think that this approach of having these various workshops, it's really great. And I did put in a shameless plug. We did have a grant for an echo series on healthcare transition. So when students are transitioning from pediatric to adult healthcare, that's something that's often overlooked. And if you have a medically fragile student that you're working with, there can be some like pretty severe gaps in services. So we can include some additional resources and send that out if you guys don't want to watch 6 hours of recorded sessions. So Charmaine, thank you. I'll make sure that we include some of that in our additional resources.
So that's one of the parent student information nights that actually translated into a Saturday session was that healthcare piece. And we had someone from Family Voices of North Dakota come in. They have a really comprehensive kind of a curriculum or notebook that they put together, binder rather. And so we had them come in and present too, but just in having a daughter with a disability, as you can probably tell, I have a real passion for helping families and making sure they know about resources because although sometimes we feel alone in our situation, we're not. And there are so many different resources and opportunities out there that I wanted to make sure everybody knew about them and that they didn't feel alone and that I supported them in whatever way that I could. So yes, healthcare can be a huge piece as well. Thank you for bringing that up and putting that in there. I wanted to let you know too that some of these workshop topics are things that I would address in classes. So I was invited into my last year that I was at Dickinson High School. I was invited to be a part of all of there's a freshman orientation kind of class that was required for all freshmen. So I went into all the freshman classes and we did a master application, resume, cover letter, references. So it it is important beyond just students with disabilities and applies to a lot of, well, all the students really at the high school. So if you're finding that you're kind of getting flack on, you're hearing from the school that you don't really have an opportunity to go into special ed classrooms or whatever, it applies to everybody and it benefits everybody. So really, it kind of crosses over. And what I heard from VR as far as my ability or opportunity or the legalities, if you want to say it that way, of going into just general ed classrooms is as long as there was a special ed student in there, it was completely fine that I could go into these classrooms. I even went into some AP classes and we did master application, resume, cover letter, references in there because there were special ed students in there as well, so it covers all levels and is applicable to everybody. Does anybody have any other questions, comments?
With your workshops, did you come up with the curriculum or did you have, I know you said like banks came in for some of them, or was there somewhere where you got
So
better information than others?
what I started out doing is I developed a team at the high school that involved special educators, paras, just whoever was interested essentially. And there were even people that I had work with me in the SWEPT program from outside the high school. So maybe they were paras at the junior high or whatever. I pulled them together into a team and essentially hired them because they were paid through the transition grant, or not grant, but the proposal that I'd written, the funding proposal to VR. They were paid through that. We would get together and just brainstorm about different workshops that we wanted to offer. I didn't come up with it all on my own. They are in the trenches with me and hearing about needs or seeing needs that students have with self-advocacy or soft skills or whatever it would happen to be. And we would kind of come up with things together. We would pull together different resources, come up with a curriculum, pulling from different places. I mean, I just had an amazing team of people that I worked with to pull everything together. And if you reach out to Family Voices or you reach out to VR or whoever, they use stuff in all these different areas, and you can pull from that. You don't have to do everything from scratch. There are a lot of resources out there when you start reaching out and asking and looking. And just building those collaborations. Like I said, we had the Independent Living Center, the two staff members from there come in and talk about several different things. They have an advocacy training that it's all ready to go. We just had them come in and do presentations, and then we just, printed out whatever we needed to print out. So again, you don't have to build everything from scratch. There's so much out there, but some of it I did build from scratch. And one thing I wanted to mention too is with those transition funds, that master application, resume, cover letter, references, we put them all on a thumb drive for the students. So when they developed all those things, we put it on a thumb drive so that they had all that and could take that with them. And then when each student graduated, or if they left the high school for some reason, I developed a transition binder for them that had many different sections in it. And I won't get into that now for sake of time, but it had a bunch of different sections in it with resources and information on post-secondary opportunities, the phone numbers for VR, for job services, for XYZ. It was all at their fingertips. So they had all those resources when they left the high school and didn't have to try to search or try to remember, now what did we learn about who to reach out to for this or that or whatever. So they had, again, all of that information at their fingertips. And I can't tell you how many of them thanked me over and over again. Even years after they'd graduate, they'd come back and say, hey, I still use that binder you gave me with all that information. At the time, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a huge thing, but I've used it a bunch. So thank you. So even sending them on their way with a bunch of information that they don't at the time think is relevant or that they'll use, they do end up using it. Any other questions or anything at all? So the last slide, I do have my contact information in case you do think of something later, or I am more than happy to share resources or materials that I've accumulated. I still have all of it. If you have questions, again, reach out to me, please. I'd be happy to answer any questions or point you in the right direction. Again, I want to thank everybody for the opportunity to speak to you today. Obviously, I'm pretty passionate about what I've been speaking about. So I'm happy to share it with all of you. And I hope that you've gained something from my presentation that's of value to you moving forward.
And I see somebody already took the initiative, but I did put the evaluation link in the chat. Oh, look, we got another one. Okay. But I did put the evaluation link in the chat, and so if y'all could just finish that before you head out, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you. There are a bunch of comments coming in, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to present. Again, it's something I'm passionate about, so feel free if you have additional questions or want resources or other information, just want to pick my brain about something or have specific questions, please do reach out to me. I'd be happy to help you out in any way that I can.
Yeah, thank you so much, Deb. If you don't mind, what I'll do is I'll include your email in the additional resources that we send out so that it's kind of easy access right
Absolutely.
after this session.
Yes,
Yeah, we're having
absolutely.
Great presentation. Love the ideas. That was like a plethora of ideas. So thank you for sharing all of that.
I even tried to pare it down a little bit because there's more, but I didn't want to overwhelm everybody. So if you want information on a topic I didn't address today, feel free to reach out. I may have ideas, or there may be things that I've done related to that specific topic. So just feel free to reach out.
Perfect. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today, and we hope you have a great rest of your day. Please fill out that evaluation, and we hope to see you next week for our session on, is it personal genius?
Job development.
Job development, and I believe we're featuring some of the VR business specialists, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit about how to make some of those relationships with businesses and how VR can help you in that endeavor. So thank you, everybody.